The MSI GE series of laptops has been well known for their sleek design and high performance. Ever since we tested the GE76 as one of our first reviews on this channel, we've been itching to get our hands on the newest model. But can this version with its 3070 Ti and Intel HX CPU live up to the expectations of the GE series, or will it fall flat? Let's find out. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Epic PC channel, and today we're sitting down with the GE67 HX from MSI. Now this is our latest addition to the GE series of laptops, but before we delve into the performance of this specific machine, we want to talk about the specifications. This thing features a NVIDIA RTX 3070 Ti at 150 watts TDP, an Intel i7-12800HX with a total of 16 cores, 32 gigabytes of DDR5, a 1TB NVMe, and a 15.6-inch QHD 240Hz OLED screen. Now this is the first OLED screen with high refresh rate, so it's a world first into production. The GPU, of course, in this machine is the 3070 Ti from NVIDIA. Now, within this specific machine, it's set at 150 watts TDP, and normally in a typical desktop variant of the 3070 Ti, it's sitting at about 290 watts. So that's a big power difference between the two GPUs. NVIDIA has spent a lot of time improving their software to get the most performance out of these small laptop cards. These features include a bunch of hypertuning and features so that this GPU performs optimally even at a smaller TDP. This includes their improved DLSS experience. Now during gameplay across the three laptops we have in the studio at the moment, the new DLSS makes a substantial performance difference, up to 20% during real gameplay testing. So I can guarantee this is not just NVIDIA marketing hype. Of course, being a 3000 series GPU, it has NVIDIA's second generation ray tracing cores, which gives a beautiful experience. Finally, NVIDIA Reflex is a new piece of tech that NVIDIA are putting into the laptop market that will substantially improve the performance throughput between the CPU and GPU. The build quality of the GE67 HX is absolutely outstanding. It compares to some of the most expensive laptops that MSI has sent me in the past, including their most expensive GT77. It uses premium materials throughout, including metal on the chassis and the screen, and although it uses plastic on the bottom and the hinges, it doesn't feel cheap in any way. I also love the titanium blue finish of the metal. It looks absolutely stunning. One complaint I have about the design is the fact that the MSI logo is not very discreet, but this is probably up to your own personal preference. It has also inherited the LED light bar at the front from the GE76. To be honest, during the GE76 review, I didn't particularly like this light bar, but I think they've improved it drastically and I do like it on this machine. However, it is a punish to keep clean. In terms of the compactness of this machine, for an unlocked CPU and GPU, it is actually pretty compact. It comes in at about 3 centimeters at the thickest point of the laptop, and it weighs around 2 kilograms. Amusingly, this would be an extremely portable laptop if it wasn't for the power bank. The power bank alone comes in at 1.5 kilograms, so it's not exactly the most portable setup. When you compare this laptop to the Razer Blade or even the GS77 Stealth that we've reviewed in the last couple of months, I would say the build quality falls a little bit flatter and it is less portable than these machines. And that's for one very specific reason. Both the Razer and the other MSI GS77 Stealth have limited CPUs and GPUs, whereas the GE67 has completely unlocked CPUs and GPUs, and so the thermal requirements will be completely different. The GE67 has 5 zones of intakes and outtakes, one large area on the bottom that acts as an intake, 2 exhausts next to the IOs, and 2 rear exhausts. Interestingly, the 67 does not feature a typical exhaust under the screen, potentially to reduce the risk of damaging the OLED. The palm rest sits at about 28 degrees, and towards the screen the temperature was around 39 degrees. This is probably due to the lack of exhaust under the screen. As for sound, this is an extremely loud machine. It pushed out 56 dBA under load and 40 dBA under normal settings, about 5 dBA louder than the Razer. So bring some headphones if you are going to use this machine. As I mentioned towards the beginning of the video, this is the first ever production of an OLED high refresh rate monitor within a laptop. Specifically, this is a Quad HD or 2K display with 240Hz refresh rate, and of course it's an OLED. Now, typically when manufacturers produce laptop screens, or any screen for that matter, they use a specific technology. These technologies can include TN, IPS, or VA panels, but each of them has specific pros and cons. Some with bad color, bad contrast ratio, or poor response times, but OLED is an absolute game changer. OLED has been an extremely common technology in TVs for a long time, specifically because of its great color contrast as well as color reproducibility, but it also has really good refresh rates because of the specific diodes that it uses. Now, in terms of laptops and desktop computers that use OLED, we have really been limited to the high end of 4K with 60Hz and 120Hz, and we haven't really got a high refresh rate screen such as in the GE67 HX. Now, with the GE67 HX, we have a 240Hz monitor, which is really the sweet spot for gamers like myself who enjoy games like Counter-Strike, which benefit from having extremely high refresh rates. The only downside to this specific screen is its reflectiveness, and I think I speak for everyone when saying that reflectiveness is very annoying during loading screens, and I don't want to see myself in the reflection every time I hit one of those. Another negative of the OLED design is the possibility of burn issues in any OLED panel. But MSI have designed an OLED protection utility in the MSI Creator Center, which reduces the possibility of burn-in. Now on to the performance metrics of the GE67 HX. We're going to do a direct comparison to the Razer Blade 14, which we reviewed in our most recent video. The Razer Blade 14 2022 edition features an RTX 3070 Ti and also a 6900 HX from the AMD team. Now, the 3070 Ti in the Razer is dialed back a little bit to 100 watts, but it is a good comparison to the GE67's 150 watt version of the same card. First up to the Cinebench CPU benchmark, and we're going to be using R23. In multi-core, the Intel side was able to achieve 19,804 in the single run and 18,611 in the 10-minute stress test, while the little Razer was able to score 13,859 in the single run test. In single core setup, the Raider was able to run at 1,804, while the Razer scored 1,517. This is a 35% improvement in the multi-core performance and a 17% improvement in the single core benchmarks. Clearly, the Intel side is pulling a lot more power than the AMD side and in a larger chassis, but it's a good margin. In the GPU benchmarks in Firestrike Ultra, the 67 was able to achieve a score of 7,357, while the Razer achieved a score of 6,594. This is a performance difference of only 3.5% points, and I would have expected that the 67 would have crushed the baby Razer in this test. Due to the cooling performance of the 67, we did have some headroom for some overclocking and was able to achieve 7,844 with the MSI software set to maximum. In Firestrike Standard, it was a similar story with the 67 pulling off 25,418, while the Razer pulled off 23,459. It's a slightly larger margin of 8%, but with the extra 50 wattage, I expected a higher margin. In the DirectX 12 times by test, the 67 scored 11,599, while the Razer scored 9,724. That's around a 17.5% improvement and more in line with the performance bump I was expecting. It will definitely be interesting to see if this expected bump delivered in DX12 benchmarks is translated in the gameplay tests. In Metro Exodus, it was a bit of a mixed bag for the GE67. Without DLSS on and everything tuned to the maximum settings, the game was almost unplayable, at an average of 48 FPS. While with DLSS on, the performance was 104 FPS average. Compared to the Razer, the difference between DLSS performance was less drastic, with an average of between 35 and 40 FPS without DLSS on, and 60 to 70 FPS with DLSS on. Clearly, the extra performance offered by the GE67 translated to a bump in performance in both tests. In Forza 5, which I must add is absolutely beautiful on the new OLED screen, the 67 averaged 77 FPS during gameplay and 67 FPS in benchmark mode. The Razer, on the other hand, averaged 47 FPS in benchmark mode at 2K and gameplay of around 66 FPS. Again, a clear win for the larger MSI GE67. Finally, in Doom Eternal, the performance with DLSS on averaged 160 FPS at 2K, while the performance with DLSS off was 86 FPS average. This was the largest victory for the GE67, as the Razer barely broke 60 FPS with DLSS on and worse with it off. At $3,799, the MSI GE67 HX Raider is actually in a decent price point for its performance. When you compare it directly to something like the GT77 that MSI sent us recently, this thing performs only about 20% worse than that, but is about half the price of that machine. So you could buy two of these machines for the price of a GT77. Now, I do find it hard to say that something that costs almost 4,000 Australian dollars is at a decent price point or is worth your money. But if you directly compare it to something like the Razer Blade 14, which the GE67 absolutely smashed in every way possible, apart from build quality and design, it's a pretty good price, sitting at about $500 less than the Razer Blade. This is also the world's first taste of a high refresh rate OLED screen on a laptop. And you can probably expect that prices will go down over time, so if you're going to pick up the laptop just for the OLED, I'd probably wait for that. That being said, the OLED on this thing is absolutely amazing, and I found myself staring at movies and also games a lot longer than I had anticipated. Playing games like Forza 5, I found myself playing for hours on end, even though I had already finished the benchmarks I had set out. If I'm going to recommend a laptop from the late run of 2022 laptops, it's probably going to be the GE67 HX, even if I had deep enough pockets to afford the GT77. Thank you guys so much for checking out the most recent video on the MSI GE67 HX. If you did enjoy the content, feel free to drop a like or subscribe to the channel. And as always, we're doing a giveaway this video. We're giving away an MSI goodie bag, which features a MSI mouse, an MSI plushie, and also an MSI gaming backpack. If you are interested in joining that, feel free to check out the links in the description below. And as always, guys, have a great day.